Business English. As always, it's a pleasure having you here today. My name is Andrew Ambrosius, and in this week's episode, we're going to be looking at the present and future perfect and how we can use them to talk about change when we're presenting in a meeting or discussing things such as sales from the previous quarter or looking at sales forecasts into the future. So if you need to talk about change in your organization and you seem to always use the same structures, then this episode will help you to understand how you can talk about change over time and how you can make predictions for things that will happen or will have happened or will have finished in the future. So here at the AOBE, we really appreciate that the present perfect tense can sometimes be a little confusing, especially for Spanish speakers. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to explain to you how to use it and implement it in your next meeting or presentation. Okay? So in today's episode, we will be covering the use of the present and future perfect, how to apply them for past and future use when discussing sales figures and forecasts. I'm going to give you some examples of these structures in use and then bring it all together at the end with an example of how we can use them all in some dialogue. So let's start with the present perfect simple. So let's begin with the present perfect. So we use the present perfect when we want to show a link between the past and the present. The present perfect simple has the following structure. Okay, so in affirmative, we start with the subject. Then we use the auxiliary have or has, depending on the subject. If it's have, it's I, you, we, and they. Whereas if it's has, it's he, she, and it. Okay. So then we follow this with the past participle. An example of this would be sales have been strong. When we talk about the past participle, we're talking about the third column. Remember, we have infinitive, so the verb to be. Then we have the simple past form, which is was or were. And then we have the past participle or the participle form, which is been. Okay, if it's a regular verb, then it is with ed. So want in simple past is wanted and in past participle, wanted. However, if it's a irregular verb, then you need to learn the past participle form. Now, in the negative structure for the present perfect simple, we would put subject plus have or has plus not, plus past participle. So an example would be sales haven't increased. And in the question form, we invert and we put the auxiliary first. So we put have or has plus the subject plus past participle. So have sales gone down? Now, we also should note that there are contracted forms. So we can say she has as she's come early. Okay, for example, or in the negative form, we can put hasn't or haven't. We haven't arrived early. And in the question form, you don't really do contractions. Okay, so basically, let's look then at the use of the present perfect simple. So we use the present perfect simple to talk about a time period that is not finished. For example, today or this week. So we've seen strong sales during this quarter. So this quarter is not closed. This quarter hasn't finished. Now that's something that's important to note. With the present perfect in English, the action is often continuing, whereas in Spanish it sounds as if the action has finished. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So another one is to show that something happened at some point in the past before now, okay, but we don't state or say when it happened. So we have received a lot of feedback from the last marketing campaign. When did we receive this feedback? We don't really know, but it is relevant to the present, okay? So that's why we use a present perfect. The following time expressions are often used: ever, never, before, up to now, still, and so far. So these are the best sales results we have ever seen. And this means at any point before now. For example, we use ever as well in questions. So have you ever been to New York? Okay, which would be basically has estado una vez en Nueva York. Okay, so this ever. Never is only negative and it can't really appear in questions. You would just say I've never been to New York. All right. And so far and up to now basically mean hasta ahora. Okay. Now remember, if we say something, if we say when something happened, all right, we must use the simple past. So that's important. So sales were flat in the month of May. We say the month and May has finished, so it must be the simple past. If we were still in May, we could say sales have been flat this month because this month hasn't finished. All right, so we also use it to talk about a present situation which started in the past, and we usually use with for or since. Okay, remember that for and since are very commonly used with the present perfect. Okay, it's important to note that we use for, okay, to talk about the length of time. Okay, so for plus the length of time. For example, for 2 minutes, for 2 days, for 2 weeks, for 2 months. All right, and we use since with a point in time. So since Monday, since 1996, since I last saw Mark, or since I started working here. We can also use the present perfect simple to talk about something that happened at an unmentioned time in the past, but has a connection with the present. So, for example, we have closed the accounts for the first quarter and the results are better than expected. We don't know when those accounts were closed. However, they're important now in the present. So the following time expressions are also often used recently, just, already, and yet with negative sentences or questions. That's very important. For example, I've just seen the latest sale report. Remember, in Spanish, just is acabo de, and we use it with the present perfect, very common. And have you spoken to Graham yet? Okay, we don't say, in Spanish, yet is aún. Okay, so don't get confused with yet, because yet appears in questions. So in Spanish, you would say, ¿Todavía has hablado con Graham ya? Or ya has hablado con Graham? With ya. But ya is already. We don't say, have you spoken to Graham already? Okay, we would use yet because it's a question. Okay, if it's negative, we say, I have not spoken to Graham yet. Okay, which would be okay because in Spanish we would say, todavía no he hablado con Graham. So now that we understand the present perfect simple, let's look at the present perfect progressive. Now, the present perfect progressive has the following structure. In affirmative, we would use the subject plus have or has, plus the past participle verb of the verb to be, which is been, plus a verb in gerund, meaning verb with ing. So, for example, sales have been increasing month on month. In the negative, we would say subject plus have or has not, plus been, again, the past participle of the verb to be, and then we would say, for example, sales haven't been doing as well as they should. Okay, so again, verb in gerund after the verb to be in past participle. Now the question form would be again with the inversion have or has plus the subject plus been plus verb ing. So have sales been improving this quarter? Right, so we can use both the present perfect simple and the present perfect progressive to talk about how long a situation or activity has been occurring. And again, we often use for or since. So I've worked here for 10 years, or I've been working here for 10 years. Okay, or I've written a report this morning, or I've been writing this report all morning. So just remember that that is very important difference, I guess, between Spanish and English. If you say, I've worked here for 10 years in English, to the listener, they know that you have worked durante, okay, for a 10-year period. However, you still work there, and that sounds like you still work there. However, in Spanish, if you say, yo he trabajado aquí durante 10 años, it sounds like you did work there for 10 years, but now you no longer work there. So that's a very common difference between present perfect in English and Spanish, okay? So let's look at the difference between the present perfect simple and the present perfect progressive. Basically, the present perfect progressive is used to emphasize the duration, okay, of activities. So for example, I've been working on this report all morning. We want to really put the emphasis on the time it's been taking us to do this report. Whereas the present perfect simple would put the emphasis on the number of times something has happened. So I've written 2 reports this morning, and it does sound like those reports are now finished. Now focuses on the activity, so the present perfect progressive also focuses on the activity and does not necessarily show whether the activity is completed. So for example, I've been writing this report all morning, so we don't really know if the report has been finished or not. And I've written the report. The report is finished, but we don't know when it was finished. Okay, so the present perfect simple focuses on the result or the completion of the activity, where the present perfect progressive focuses on the activity itself, okay, and the duration. Okay, so now that we should basically understand how to talk about the past actions that are relevant for the present, and we understand how to do this by using the present perfect. So in the next part of the episode, we're going to be looking at how we can use the future perfect to talk about future actions that will be finished in the future, okay, and how we can apply them to forecasting. So then let's look at the future perfect simple and the structure, okay? So the affirmative is subject plus will plus have plus verb in past participle. For example, sales will have expanded by December. Negative would be subject plus will not plus have plus past participle, so sales won't have met expectations by the end of the year. And the question form is with will plus subject plus have plus past participle. So will sales have reached our targets by the end of this quarter? Okay, so we use the future perfect simple basically to talk about a future event that will finish before a specified time in the future. And we often use it with words such as by plus a fixed time, okay, or in plus the amount of time. So by the end of the quarter, that's the fixed time, sales will have grown considerably. And with the next one, I'll have finished the full sales forecast by the end of the week. Okay, this time next week, we will have finished the sales presentation. Okay, so we're talking about things that we expect will be finished in the future. Okay, now what I want to do next is apply the present perfect to sales meetings or presentations. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we can apply this to different situations. Now that we understand how how present perfect and future perfect work at a grammatical level, we're going to look at how these structures can be applied to sales meetings or presentations. Okay, so the first thing to remember when using the present perfect in English is that it can be used to talk about things that that happened in the past and are still happening. Okay, so this can sound a little strange, as I mentioned before, to Spanish speakers. So let me demonstrate. I have worked here for 5 years. In English, this transmits that the person has been working in the company for 5 years and continues to work in the company. And in Spanish, he trabajado aquí durante 5 años. So, however, in Spanish, the sentence really gives the impression that the person no longer works for the company. So we must have this clear, or we will not really apply the present perfect correctly. And secondly, in Spanish, we can use the present simple to talk about things that started in the past and are true in the present. For example, we could say, desde hace 5 años que trabajo aquí. Okay, so desde hace 5 años que trabajo aquí. I mean, this structure above in English is pretty impossible. Well, actually, it's not pretty impossible. It is impossible because in English, we're forced to use the present perfect. Okay, why? Well, because we can only include time in the past up to the present by using the present perfect. In English, you cannot mix since and ago with the present simple, okay? Because since works with the present perfect from a fixed point in the past up to the present, and ago is with the simple past, okay? So if we're in a meeting and we need to provide a sales report or we need to give a presentation in the form of a sales presentation. Then we can use the present perfect simple and the present perfect progressive in the following way, okay? So first, to talk about a period of time that has not finished. So the context for this example is the monthly managers meeting at the beginning of March. So it's at the beginning of March. And as you know, in English, the first quarter is from January to March. So hello everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm happy to report that this quarter has been very profitable, okay? So has been for the company. We've seen sales jump. So we have seen sales jump. That's present perfect. We have seen sales jump by almost 20%. We have also seen, again, present perfect, we have also seen an increase in our market share. Sales of our line of winter boots have increased steadily. Okay, so again, present perfect, have increased steadily. And sales of coats has also been stronger than expected. So here in this example, the quarter which we're referring to has not finished. The managers meeting is at the beginning of March and the quarter is still in progress. So the person is reporting on the progress of sales during this quarter, even though the quarter has not been closed. So therefore, we are talking about the evolution, okay, of the sales over a period of time which has not yet finished. So in the next example, we're going to look at using the present perfect simple to show that something happened in the past and is relevant to the present. Okay, so the context, European Key Accounts Manager meeting, a client evolution update. Okay, so John, could you please inform us about the client Marshall SA and how they are evolving? So, of course, Mark, my pleasure. Marshall is evolving positively. They have steadily increased their orders month on month. So have increased. So far, we have supplied them for 3 big contracts. Okay, so again, this period of time is continuing. These things have happened in the past and they're relevant in the present. So we have supplied them for 3 big contracts that they were awarded. Furthermore, they have won a considerable number of smaller contracts recently, and they have required a large number of references to complete these jobs. So here I'm using the present perfect in a number of ways. Basically, we're referring to things that did happen in the past. For example, the company has won a number of contracts, smaller contracts. We don't know when those contracts were awarded. However, what is important is that this information is relevant for us now in the present. So here we can see that a number of things have occurred over a period of time, and we're not exactly sure when they happened, but the information is relevant now in the present, so we must use the present perfect to demonstrate this. Now let's talk about a situation that started in the past with for or since. So the context here is that we're describing the evolution of sales over a 1-month period since product launch. So sales have been steady for the past month. Since we launched the new product, we have been happy with the evolution of sales, especially in Europe, where adoption has been strong. So here we're using the have been and has been quite a lot, okay? Because we're talking about the status of something. So in the above examples, we can see that we used the use of for plus a time expression, okay, for the past month. Remember with English, now this is important, during and for are used differently, and they should not be confused, because in Spanish, durante is durante, and in English, durante equals for, and durante also equals during. Now remember that for is plus a time expression, so for 2 years, whereas during is when we mention when. So during my summer holiday, okay, we're not following during with a time expression. This is a very common mistake amongst students, okay? So let's talk now about the present perfect progressive and see how we can apply this to our meetings and presentations. So how to apply the present perfect progressive to sales meetings or presentations. The first thing that we need to keep in mind is that often the present perfect simple and the present perfect progressive will both work for certain structures, okay? However, the progressive form is generally used to focus on the duration of the activity, and also the activity itself. It doesn't really express if the action has finished. So firstly, emphasizing how long and talking about the activities. So the context here is talking about a marketing campaign over a period of time. So the summer marketing campaign has been running since early June. Again, has been running, so it's still in progress. And the results so far have been positive. Okay, so have been positive is present perfect. We have been tracking, okay, again, present perfect progressive. We have been tracking sales volumes and can report that they have been trending upwards as we have been focusing our energies on a coordinated social media marketing campaign on all the major platforms. Okay, so as you can see in the example, we're talking about the ongoing activities. The marketing campaign started in the past and continues in the present. None of the activities has finished, and we use the progressive form to focus on the fact that these activities are still in progress and that they are occurring over a period of time. Okay, so now we're going to turn to the last perfect form to complete our examples, and then in use. Okay, I'm going to give you an example of them in use. So let's look at the future perfect simple. So how can we apply the future perfect simple to our sales meetings or presentations? So firstly, remember that the future perfect simple is very easy to use and translate, as it's practically the same in Spanish. Okay, so an example of the future perfect simple in Spanish is este viernes al mediodía habré terminado mi informe. Okay, so in English we can quickly translate that to I will have finished the report by Friday lunchtime. So let's look at an example in context. So this is about making future forecasts in a meeting based on sales projections. So John, can you please give us your thoughts on sales volumes for the next month? My pleasure, Mark. Based on correct sales trends, we will have reached our sales objectives before the end of this month. If sales continue at this rate, then by the end of the quarter, we will have beaten our sales targets by close to 10%. On the downside, we will have to increase production to meet demand, meaning by the end of the quarter, we will have gone over budget on our labor cost predictions. Again, here we can see that each of these activities will be or are predicted to be completed at a future point. So we can use the future perfect simple to talk about sales forecasts into the future. However, remember that it is to say whether the activity will be completed or not. Okay, so in the last part, I want to bring all of this together, okay, and give you a final example of how we can use them all together. So bringing it all together, the context is giving a sales report in a meeting. So hello everyone, today I'm going to give you a quick update on how the sales in the second quarter of this financial year have been evolving. As you all know, the first quarter was a bit weak. However, I'm happy to report that sales in the second quarter have been improving. We've seen strong growth in our cosmetics line. We've also seen good sales from our perfume brands, and I'm happy to say that our newly launched line of bags has been performing well too. Now, if things continue this way, then sales will have beaten our initial forecasts by the end of this quarter. Okay, so that's an example of how we can put these three different tenses into practice to give a sales report in a meeting. Now, final thoughts. Well, there you have it, using the present perfect and future perfect to talk about sales in meetings or presentations. Now, be sure to review all of the vocabulary and structures at our website. Okay, you can download a copy, PDF copy of this from the site. And this will help you just with your study plan. And I hope you have enjoyed the episode and got a lot of value from it. If you like the episode, then please leave us a comment and share it with your friends. And if you have any questions regarding the use of the present perfect or future perfect, then please get in touch. We're more than happy to help. And that is all we have time for today. So take care, and I will see you all next week. And make sure you have a great week. Bye for now.